America just woke up to a legal earthquake, one so powerful that the entire national debate over firearms, the ATF, and federal overreach has been shaken to its core. Because in a stunning move that blindsided both sides of the gun rights war, the United States Supreme Court has taken action that pushes the country closer than ever toward a permanent nationwide shutdown of the SB and Pistol Brace Rule. Not a pause, not a temporary delay, a possible full, permanent, coast-to-coast ban on enforcement. And the shockwaves are already tearing across all 50 states. What just happened is bigger than one rule, bigger than the ATF, and bigger than the Biden administration, because the Supreme Court is now signaling that a major constitutional win for gun owners may be just over the horizon. And the speed, the tone, and the force behind this latest judicial move has left legal analysts stunned and Washington absolutely panicking. For months, the Pistol Brace Rule has been a center of nationwide chaos. Millions of law-abiding gun owners suddenly found themselves being labeled potential felons overnight simply because the ATF decided to reclassify braced pistols as short-barreled rifles, something Congress never voted on and courts never approved. Lawsuits exploded, states rebelled, gun groups mobilized, and the Supreme Court watched from above as the entire legal system spiraled into a storm of conflicting rulings, emergency motions, and constitutional questions. But now, with one swift action, the highest court in the country has stepped down from the sidelines and placed its hand directly on the scale. And that action is what has the entire nation buzzing, because this time the Supreme Court didn't simply accept a filing. They didn't quietly delay a petition. They acted in a way that experts are calling one of the strongest signs yet that the ATF's rule is standing on legal quicksand. When the court signals that a federal agency may have overstepped its constitutional authority, every legal institution in America pays attention. And in this moment, the message is loud, clear, and impossible to ignore. The justices are preparing to take full control of this issue, and the Pistol Brace Rule may be on its last breath. The Biden administration never expected this kind of pushback. They believed the rule would survive long enough to force compliance, intimidate gun owners, and reshape the landscape of federal firearms regulation. Instead, the courts below have been ripping holes in the rule for months, and the Supreme Court has now essentially pushed the momentum toward a nationwide halt. What's happening is historic because it's extremely rare for the court to intervene this early, this aggressively, and with signals this strong about where things are headed. Across the country, millions of gun owners are watching this moment closely. For them, this isn't an abstract legal debate. This is about rights, freedom, and the fear of waking up one morning to discover that something they legally purchased, legally owned, and legally used has been redefined into a felony by bureaucratic pen stroke. The Founding Fathers never intended for federal agencies to change criminal law without Congress. And now, finally, the Supreme Court is stepping in to decide whether the ATF crossed that constitutional line. Inside legal circles, analysts are saying this latest action is less about the technical details of braces and more about the future of executive power. If the court rules against the ATF, it will send a message that no federal agency, not the ATF, not the EPA, not any other regulatory body, can rewrite law on its own authority. And that would be a massive victory for separation of powers, for constitutional structure, and for millions of Americans who have felt increasingly suffocated by regulatory overreach. But to fully understand the magnitude of what's happening right now, we need to rewind to how this entire situation began. After years of giving pistol braces the green light, the ATF suddenly reversed itself and declared that most braced pistols were actually short-barreled rifles under the NFA, a classification that requires registration, fingerprints, tax stamps, and compliance with harsh federal rules. Overnight, tens of millions of firearms were relabeled, not because Congress voted, not because the courts ruled, but because the ATF changed its mind. Gun owners were outraged. Veterans, disabled shooters, sport shooters, trainers, everyday law-abiding citizens, people who bought braces because they were approved for a decade, felt betrayed. And on top of that betrayal came fear. Fear of retroactive criminalization, fear of government overreach, fear of political weaponization. And within weeks, states and gun groups launched some of the largest firearm-related lawsuits America has seen in years. Lower courts started striking down parts of the rule. Injunctions were granted, injunctions were expanded. Some states refused to comply. Others demanded immediate Supreme Court intervention. Legal scholars warned that the ATF's logic violated not just Bruin, but also the Constitution's core separation of powers doctrine. The momentum was shifting fast, but even then, no one expected the Supreme Court to make this kind of move at this moment. And now the Biden administration finds itself cornered, because if the ATF loses this case at the Supreme Court level, it won't simply be a setback. It will be a complete demolition of their ability to regulate by reinterpretation. It would mark the end of their strategy of using administrative power to bypass Congress. The stakes aren't just high, they're historic. Gun rights groups are energized like never before. They believe this is their greatest opportunity in decades to shut down regulatory overreach. Many are calling this moment a once-in-a-generation shot at restoring constitutional limits, and they know that a permanent nationwide block would not just eliminate the pistol brace rule, it would block the ATF from trying anything similar in the future. Meanwhile, gun control advocates are in panic mode. They argue that losing this case would open the door to deregulation on a scale they fear could reshape the gun landscape entirely. And they're not wrong. The ripple effects of a Supreme Court ruling against the ATF would be massive and long-lasting. But here's the key. The Supreme Court doesn't care about politics, polls, or panic. They care about precedent, constitutional structure, and legal consistency. And all signs point to the justices preparing to make a statement that will echo across the entire nation. Right now, all 50 states are holding their breath. Whether they agree with the rule or despise it, everyone understands the significance of this moment, because once the Supreme Court takes control of an issue like this, the outcome writes itself into American history, and the next step could redefine everything about how firearms are regulated in the United States. Imagine the impact. No more sudden reinterpretations, no more surprise rule changes, no more retroactive criminalization. Congress, not agencies, would return to the center of lawmaking power. Gun owners would gain clarity, stability, and legal security that hasn't existed in decades, and the courts would solidify a strict boundary between judicial, legislative, and executive authority. That is what this case is really about. The pistol brace rule is the spark. The Constitution is the battlefield, and the Supreme Court is stepping onto that battlefield with more force than anyone expected. The major win that gun owners have been hoping for might now be closer than ever, because with this move, the Supreme Court has sent a message that is shaking every corner of Washington. The era of unchecked regulatory power may finally be coming to an end, and if the court ultimately rules the way experts believe they will, the pistol brace rule won't just be paused, it'll be dead, gone, and buried. A permanent, nationwide block would cement this moment as one of the biggest legal victories for the Second Amendment in modern history.